Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday As Bill Sees It meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Paulette from Florida, who's kindly come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we will open up for general sharing, or if you'd like to ask a question. Over to you, Paulette. The floor is yours. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you so much. I am an alcoholic, and every time that I'm asked to speak in front of a group of fellow alcoholics or fellow travelers, as I like to call you guys, taken from the big book, fellow travelers, there's a nervous energy that goes it through me. And my first sponsor reminds me that nervous energy is God shaking the truth out of you. And so I think of it that way ever since he told me that. Because as an alcoholic, I don't want to get up in front of you and tell you the truth about this disease that I suffer with or suffer from. But I know that I have to give it away in order for me to keep it. That is not a bumper sticker. It is how it works. And so I'm grateful to be here. I want to thank Young for reaching out and asking me to be of service. This is the month I got sober. My sober date is January 28, 1995. I am sponsored and I sponsor. And to me, that's the difference between work and working. I do have a home group, and my home group is One Day at a Time group of Alcoholics Anonymous located in Miramar, Florida. And I am grateful to be here. I chose this page chose me. I opened, before I even tell you how I came to be able to be on 112, one of my sponsees and I have been studying As Bill Sees It for the past year and a half. And so it's a very familiar book that I am very comfortable with. But when Young told me that this was an As Bill Sees It meeting, I was like, oh, shoot, I got to pick something and I got to talk about it. I don't think I'm ready for that. And that's my disease, by the way. And so I had to laugh. But I was taught in early by the long timers that were there when I got sober in Brooklyn, New York. Open the book, and whatever page it opens up to, that's where the God of your understanding wants you to work on. And there's no coincidence, because when I read it, it starts with a complete question. Complete security? Very thought-provoking for an alcoholic like me. It means I've got to sit and consider this. Pause. It's a decision? Is it a decision? How am I with this? What is this all going to be about? Because I know now my mind just goes there, and I hadn't even read this for a while. So when I looked at it and I said, oh, I don't know, this has to do with money. I'm not so good with the money problem. I'm still struggling with financial security ever so often. But then I started to read it, and I read it again, and it talks about upon entering Alcoholics Anonymous. Entering. It wasn't a plan for me. I didn't get up one morning and said I was going to be, guess I'll just go to AA and get sober. That was not a part of my thinking. And by no stretch of my imagination have I thought that there was a group of people that drank like I did and did the crazy stuff that I did would ever be able to live without a drink. That was never a part of my conscious thinking. So I was not entering AA of my own, by my own. I was led to AA. And today I choose to think of coming into AA as divine intervention. By no stretch of the imagination did I have, this was my self-will. My self-will did all the destructive behavior, and so my life became unmanageable, and I became powerless, and that wasn't my plan. And so when I think of this complete security, I start about thinking about what my plan was. My plan was as I became an adult, my plan was to become successful in life. My plan was built, by the way, on a very shaky business model. And that business model was a resentment against my father who had left the family without support. And so my plan was based on a resentment against my father to become quite successful in life, so that I would be completely secure, not only in material security, money, property, importance, in every area of my life except one area which was not my priority. And that one area was never to get close to another human being. And that is how I set out to pursue this plan. That was my ambition. That was my goal. And so when I read this, I thought about that. It brought me back to my first plan in how to become secure. Bill Wilson I wasn't a fan of Bill Wilson when I first came into AA. I have to tell you this in all truth. And this is my disclosure. I couldn't understand what a white man had anything to do with a black woman from Jamaica who had nothing in common with this man. Why would I listen to anything he had to say? And my first sponsor says, keep reading. And as I kept reading, because my sponsor is old school, he believes everything is in the literature. And I'd come to understand that is true. It's written down. You don't have to make it up. And he says, keep reading. And I kept reading. And when I read Bill's story, I understood that I was exactly like this man. I felt as he did. My thinking was the same way. I boasted on my intellectual powers. I did not need another human being to give me security and feel that I was a part of. My God-given right for companionship, I didn't want to have anything to do with it unless it was on my terms. So I lived my life on a series of demands. I demanded that life gives me everything I set out to go for. It is what the third step reminds me of when he talks about self-propulsion. And so when I look at this, I'm thinking about the third step as well. It talks about making a decision to turn my will, which I consider today, my will is my thinking, over to the care of God as I understand God. And I think about that and I was like, oh, in all matters of alcoholism and AA teaching, there was a point in my life that I thought that it's okay for AA to take my alcoholism, anything to do with my alcoholism. But when it comes to my material security and my emotional security and my companionship and my ambitions and all the other parts of my life, AA has nothing to do with that. So I kept that part of my life separate. And that's how I proceeded in early recovery. And so when I read financial importance was no longer my principal aim. It was no longer a priority. What became a priority for me? And I like this word, clamor. There's an urgency to it. It's an outcry. It's a demand that life and people give me exactly what I need and want to allow me to be secure in my person. That word conjures up all of that, screaming out at the world to give me what I think I deserve. Because I was a frightened young lady. I walked into AA into my 30s. And I picked up my first drink at the age of 15. So emotionally, I was operating as a 15-year-old in a 30-year-old body, 34-year-old body. How did I know how to live? I got false courage from a liquid in a bottle. That was my God of my understanding. It never failed me until it failed me. The delusion that it would take me through all my situation and teach me how to handle life on life terms was a delusion. And so I had to learn how to live successfully by adopting the AA way of life, which I now come to call a design for living, with the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, and the 12 concepts. I am able to incorporate those things, but it wasn't easy. See, I am a defiant alcoholic. And so when this leads me to tell you that this reading talks about my financial security, how important it was for me. If you're like me, and I suspect all of you are, or else you wouldn't have gotten on this meeting. God knows you've got better things to do if you're not one of us. So I suspect that I will go along and that you're one of us. My thinking was not the greatest ideas to run on and live a life. My first sponsor said, when you get an idea, Paulette, run it by me. I got insulted, put him on my resentment list because I couldn't think straight. In 37, page 37 of our wonderful big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it talks about the definition of insanity. Lack of proportion, no balance, the extreme. And that's me with my thinking. And if I think it, therefore I will act it out, which therefore becomes the sum total of my life. My thinking eventually becomes the sum total of how I live my life. And so when I think about this topic, when Bill talks about, he goes into the 12 and 12, which is also a favorite of mine. I got sober, and a couple of months after I got sober, I was doing my 12-step through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which my first sponsor. My husband at the time, who's now passed 2 years now, he had been with me through my drinking years, and he has been with me through my sober years, but he passed away 2 years ago. What he did for me, which was a loving gift, he packed up 4 carton boxes of my financial bills that I hadn't paid in all my drinking years. So in other words, he put 4 boxes of my bills that I owed creditors and put it in the middle of our living room in Brooklyn, New York. That's where I got sober. That's where I lived for 25 years. And I come home happy, joyous, and free because I feel on cloud 9. And I saw these wonderful boxes in the middle of my living room. And I'm asking this wonderful man that loves me unconditionally. And I said, what the hell is in this box? These boxes. And he says, the fruits or the benefits of your drinking. He didn't say it so nicely, but I'm cleaning it up because I'm watching my language today. And so he says, and I look into and I open these boxes, and all of these boxes had every bill that I hadn't paid while I was drinking. And the fear sets in, and the anger sets in. I got to get busy. And so I called my sponsor. First, I took my husband's inventory. I called him all kinds of names. And my sponsor says to me, it isn't his problem, it's yours. What are you going to do about it? And that's when I started to do my footstep inventory on my finances. And that's way back into my first year. And I'm grateful for that guidance, because it was when I realized that I had to clean up the wreckage of my past in order for me to have any kind of financial security. I needed a God of my own understanding. I cannot tackle this alone. And for those of us who haven't had one yet, please do not be discouraged, because a girl like me who came into Alcoholics Anonymous with no relationship with a power greater than myself can sit here today and tell you I have a loving, kind God of my own understanding, who I depend on entirely throughout each day that I am blessed with recovery and life. And that God, that was very small at the time, helped me to put things in order with the guidance of a sponsor. I was able to start to make financial amends slowly. Also in my employment history, that's also a part of my material security. I have to tell you, Dr. Silkworth talks about it in the doctor's opinion. I call him Dr. Silky. That's just my loving moniker for him, because he talks about me so lovingly, because I can see my picture every time I read the doctor's opinion. And he talks about making a complete psychic change if I am going to live this way of life. A complete 360-degree change in all areas of my life. And what this is talking about for me, Bill talks about it in the 7th step when he talks about it as a revolutionary change. It takes a revolution for this alcoholic to give up all of my old ideas around finances, especially because that's where I found my power. My power lies into my material security. If I am secure within my persons and everything around me, I have everything I need, then what's the need for a higher power? What's the need to have a relationship with another human being? What's the need to do service without a price tag? What's the need to love people unconditionally? What's the need to be tolerant of you guys? Which means accepting you exactly the way you are without judgment. There's no need for that if I am wrapped up in self. When I am self-seeking, self-reliance, self-centered, when my ego is running my life, I have no need for love and tolerance, none of that. And so my shaky business plan was shattered. And I was left in that 4 carton boxes. In those boxes, my life changed, where money did not run my life anymore. Money is a tool to be used, not to use me. It's a difference. And so when he talks about it made us misers and penny pinchers, that was the extreme. I went from spending money as if it grow on tree to then when I recognized that I had spent up everything and I might not have anything for my future, because now I want to live, because Alcoholics Anonymous have given me hope that I can live and long and peaceful and sober life. Now I want money so that I will have money in my old age and to take care of myself so that I won't have to depend on others to help me. So now I become the miser and a penny pincher. I go out to have a meal with others, and I don't want to pay the bill because I might not have enough. I'm starting to count my pennies, all kinds of crazy thinking that leads to an action that it isn't me. And so what I'm looking for, this pushes me, this reading and the accompanied partner from the 12 and 12, 120, it leads me to find balance. Where is the balance? Because my life has been insane for so long. And security, which is a God-given right. Bill talks about it in the 12 and 12, in the first paragraph. He says, creation gave us instincts. These are God-given gifts. My instincts for emotional security, my instincts for material security, my instincts for companionship, to reproduce is a God-given right. And so what did I do with it? By self-propulsion, I bent it out of shape to the extreme so I can get as much out of each one of them that I demand. And so in order for me to bring myself into right size, I need to adopt the most nourishing ingredient this wonderful way of life has given me is humility. Humility, which simply means to me, it's a clear, crystal clear view of who and what I really am, with a sincere attempt to seek and desire to do the God of my understanding will. And I believe that's wrapped up in service of all kinds. Because in order for me to kill that insecurity or that comes from 1,000 forms of fear, I have to kill my self-centeredness every day. Because I am a self-centered individual. Everything goes back to self. And if I am living into self, I cannot be of service without attachment. I can't give of myself freely. I cannot. And every time I give of myself freely, I get so much from it that I cannot describe the feeling. And so for me to pick up this and tell you complete financial insecurity, I don't have yet. It is a yet. It's a day at a time, depending on my spiritual condition. When Bill talks about being frightened, I am still frightened. I remember when my husband of 41 years passed away in 2 years ago. I thought of a drink never occurred to me. Never, which is a gift. But what came to mind a year later, I was seized with this crazy fear that I will not have enough to help me live my life without him. Where did that come from? That comes from a fear that has never gone away. It means I have to continue to work and practice these spiritual principles. Why do I have to be, and when I recognize it, and so one of the things that leads me to work on these unreasonable fears and demands, I call them, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there is a part in the family afterwards that I often read with one of my sponsees because it's one of her favorite. And I think it lends to this page that we are on today, my dear fellow travelers. It talks about, and I will read it because I don't want to mess it up. It talks about, it's 127, second paragraph. It's talking about us putting our family together after we have destroyed them with our destructive behavior and our drinking, with no regards for people and their feelings and how much we have hurt them. And it begins by saying the head of the house ought to remember that he, and I read in first person, by the way, because when I do it, it personalizes this for me. So it's a preference for me. The head of the household ought to remember that she is mainly to be blamed for what befell her home. She can scarcely square the account in a lifetime. Simply telling me it's going to take a lifetime. But I must see the danger of over-concentration on financial success. Although financial recovery is on the way for many of us, I found I could not place money first. For me, material well-being always follows spiritual progress. It never precedes it. It's a reminder for this alcoholic that if I bring in the God of my understanding into my financial situations, they're no longer problems, they're situations. If I bring God in and seek his counsel, I am going to be guided in a balanced way. Now, the God of my understanding doesn't speak directly to me. My God comes to me through a hunch or an inspiration, as the reading says, that sometimes becomes a working part of my mind. But the God of my understanding talks to me through people, which shatters my business model again, because now I have to have a relationship with you in order for my God to speak through me. So all of this that I'm saying, and Young, please tell me what my timeline is. I don't know, I don't never look at clock or watch time when I'm sharing. So
13 minutes left.
Excuse
13
me?
minutes left. 13 minutes. 13, yeah.
Thank you. I just want to tell you that my relationship, as it relates to what Bill is talking about, when he says, I forgot the immense goodwill of my brother, or I would say my fellow travelers. Everyone in AA, when I walk through the door, has added to my material security, and I didn't know it. Because material security comes in so many different forms. It comes in so many different ways. I was loved before I knew what the word love meant. I was appreciated even when I opened my mouth and spoke about nonsense. They hugged me and said, Paulette, keep coming back. They told me what to do. They took me to doctors and held my hand. Sat with me in the doctor's office when I was filled with fear. That's a form of material security. You can't buy people time. Time and resources are not for sale. The way in which my sponsor listens to me when I whine and complain and bitch because I refuse to look at my part in the situation. That's material security. The way in which I listened intently to another alcoholic who is going through serious situation and just needs to have someone who's without judgment listen to them. That's material security. Because it's of spirit. It's not of me. because my self-centeredness doesn't want to spend the time listening to you. I've got better things to do. Your little problems cannot outshine mine, because I am always in the comparison business, comparing, which I always comes up short, and judging, which wants to make me feel important, and it is not, because it only makes me feel less than. And so all of this reading, I sum it up to talk about 3 things that I have to continue to work on. First of all, I want to thank this group for allowing me to continue to look at ways in which I can grow along spiritual lines. That's what service does for me. Give of myself without strings, not expecting anything back. But I do not own the outcome. Another thing is, you allow me, as I sit here, I have to make a decision about a financial, very important financial decision. And I have been praying and asking God of my understanding to please show me a sign, to help me to see what right path to take. And my friend told me, she said, did you pray and ask God for direction? And I said, yeah. She said, then what are you doing about thinking about it again? Let it go. Put it in your God box and walk away and do what is in front of you to do. Pay attention to God's children while he takes care of you. And I was like, oh yeah, they told me that way back when. And then I remembered, and another thing is, love others as you would want them to love you. It is a part of that material security. And they always say to me, what do you have to do when you come into AA and adopt this way of life? There's one thing you have to do, Paulette. You have to change. You have to change everything. But Bill says, in step 2 in the 12 and 12, he says, the sponsor laughs. He says, you don't have to take this all at once. You can take this piecemeal at a time. The hoop is huge. To me, it's a 360-degree with the God of my understanding in the middle. How do I get there? Piecemeal at a time. Opportunities for growth so I could grow into the likeness and the image of my Creator, where I am afforded an opportunity. Grace, I call it. Grace. That I can be sitting here with my fellow travelers, telling you, yes, I am still besotted with financial insecurity, but it isn't stopping me from moving forward. Thank you so much, because I'm going to end there. I'm out of material. I hope I have said something that have touched somebody's heart and have provided you with some hope that you too can pass it on to another sick and suffering fellow travelers. I am your humble servant, Paulette. Thank you.